Welcome to the second half of our countdown of the top 10 mistakes that we see radio stations make when they implement our research or other providers' research. And this is finding number 5, research implementation mistakes. Yep. So you got a nice packet of data. You assume it's cleanly collected. We serve it up to you, or somebody else does, and then you have the ability to completely screw it up. We do see some mistakes. They're innocent mistakes, but I think it's probably important we go through them. Carolyn Gilbert.
Yes. Yeah, well, I've always said research is like a hammer. You can take a hammer and gently tap a nail into the wall and hang a pretty picture. You can take the same hammer and knock the wall down and make a mess. It's a tool. It is not the gospel. It is something that is to be used to help you program your radio station and see the world. But it should not be the only thing you use. That being said, one of the things that people do that makes me a little bit nuts is they want to see these teeny weeny breakouts. 18 to 24-year-old men wearing blue pants on Thursdays while they stand on their right leg. Things like, or the core group to the other station where they had to commute. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. You cannot make decisions on these tiny samples. And remembering there's a difference between an OMT or call out and a perceptual study.
Right.
With call out, your statistical reliability starts from the universe and goes down. And when you're looking at the way you judge music, it's called repeated measure. People are answering the same kind of question over and over and over again. When that happens, the reliability goes up. And when you're honing in on 80 or 100 people from a universe of 1,000, that is also reliable.
Lee
You're
Jacobs,
looking at a qualified sample. So, but if you're looking at a perceptual and you've got 11 people here who say that your morning show host makes them want to vomit, I wouldn't necessarily act on that.
So let's take this down to the practical level. EVP of research and the person who largely implements our perceptual studies. We always talk about an N value. When we're talking about segmentation, we usually refer to something called a crosstab. And a crosstab is a sliver of an overall study, whether it's a music test or a perceptual test, that gives you perhaps a breakout of one particular aspect of your audience or a potential aspect of your competitor's audience that you can go after. But there's got to be some guidance as far as what's supportable in a 100-person music test or a 400-person perceptual.
Well, it comes down to how small is that slice, and does it really make that much of a difference? The rule of thumb that I remember learning as a college kid was if you added 3 more opinions into that breakout, the next 3 people, and they all felt, opposite the way you're sort of want to go, would that change the outcome?
Yeah.
If it would, then the breakout's too small. You're not looking at something that's reliable. So move on. Don't do that, for God's sake. I understand the temptation to want to look at 18 to 24 station core among your 18 to 49 research to just know what's the young end think. And it's okay if you need the breakout in your music data, for example, to be able to just feel like you're keeping just a pulse on what's going on down there. But for gracious sakes, don't make hard decisions on that. You don't have enough bodies.
That's right.
They're not that important.
So, Carolyn, there's a lot of young programmers out there. People have been kind of thrown into the fire through all of the kind of downsizing and consolidation that we've done. And I know that moving things through rotation can be a problem, and people can mistake certain aspects of a music test and think, and I'm talking now about current ongoing music research, they can go, oh, hey, I think this is good enough to be a power. The fave score looks great. I mean, it's a little unfamiliar, but I mean, people really want to hear it. Let's move it to A. And that, of course, can create a cascading effect when you do things like that, because clocks are meant to reflect balance in the hour. And after all, radio programmers aren't the record industry, right?
Oh, absolutely. You know, the metrics we're judged, radio is judged on are completely different than the metrics record guys are judged on. And sometimes, move that power up, move that power up. I get paid more if you move that power up.
I got another single coming out.
That's not what you get evaluated on.
Yep.
Programmers often move things through too quickly. You know, your midday guy may be sick of something because he hears it every few hours, but that's not what's going on out in the world. So, they move things up too quickly when the potential is good, but they also move things out of power too quickly because they got to make room for the next big thing. And so what we're seeing, we just have to remember the ratings are our metric. Record guys don't care about your ratings, but you probably get bonused on your ratings. Yep. They get bonused on your ad. So while we're related, it's a different business. And especially young programmers sort of get blown away because Reba said howdy. That's okay. Maybe it's maybe it's Carrie now, but you know what I'm saying.
So let's make this practical, Lee. You programmed a lot of radio stations, music stations over the years. What are maybe some general guidelines when we deliver OMT or a OMR, online music research for call-out replacement or the auditorium replacement? What are some good metrics for stations to consider in terms of what's a really valuable song, what's a borderline song, and then what's a song that, okay, finally, yes, you might have played this one to death?
Well, I mean, in our scoring system, I'm fond of looking at dislike and burn as one number. Think about it together.
That's negative.
As negative, right? Those are the negatives. And if that number starts to go up, and it varies by format, but if you've got a fifth or a quarter of what should be your theoretical core audience who are that tired, or that many are tired or dislike a song, then yeah, we're probably done, or we're certainly in a position where you could give it a little rest and see what happens to it in the next cycle, because songs can come back. But overall, I'm always looking at the popularity scores on the songs, because it takes into account everything. It gives you a nice high level view, and then you're going to want to get deep into the weeds on every title when you're reviewing a library test, so that you can make the individual decisions. And
you're weighting the popularity, the overall POP score. I think if I remember correctly, it's been a while, but a favorite counts a little bit more. It's weighted more heavily than just a general like. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, we evaluate three things. And we actually have added a new scoring system, but for the basic pop score, it's 0.5 for what we call no opinion or no action. You're not going to turn it up or off.
Right.
It's a value of 1 if you like the song, and it's a value of 1.5 if the song is a favorite. So if 100% of your sample thinks the song is a favorite, your maximum score is 150.
Yep.
You get scores around 100, and that's a really good score. We don't see things, well, in certain formats, we see songs get up there. Urban, tests through the roof.
Yep. That's really important, by the way. And I'll tell you, I got that lesson as I got slapped around in my career doing different formats. I remember when I programmed KBCO in Boulder, a very broad station that borrows from a lot of different genres, or it used to. And so the overall pop scores would be quite depressed compared to my classic rock experience, which was much more modal. And so a 67 pop might fly at KBCO as a power, but I would only look at 77 or 80s at like the Fox in Denver, for example.
Yeah, you've got to understand the format, and also understand the people within it. Some format like AAA or alternative can end up being a sample of people who, in a room, so to speak, who don't really have a lot in common. They're factions who are trying to drag it this way or that way or the other way, and you, as the programmer, are trying to keep the largest number of them happy from song to song to song. And ultimately, in my opinion, move around the things that any one group is going to dislike as you're building your music schedule. Because I might sit through one I'm not so happy with, but two, I don't know.
Right.
And that's where things like cluster analysis do come in handy,
Yep.
because you can see your audience's constituencies.
Right.
As
Instead of
opposed
using
to-
theory to do it, you can let
Right.
math do it.
Right.
And if you go back to our previous countdown video, you'll see that broken out, and you'll be pleasantly surprised that we do that for free as added value for our customers.
We do.
Okay, so let's talk about the other one, which is, and this is probably the one where the stakes are higher, because it's not just about maintenance here. It's about you're going to make some type of wholesale change, whether it's you've given the morning show a chance, or at least you think so. And so you put the morning show into test, or it could be that you think you've given the radio station a chance and you're just not seeing the kind of traction that you want to see, and you're looking for other format opportunities. So I imagine, as Lee, this is probably your baby, because you've spent so much time in conference rooms dealing with the triumvirate of decision makers, from sales, from corporate, from the programming staff that are there trying to make a good decision. What are some of the mistakes that you've seen over the years?
First of all, going too fast. But in moments after that breath, you have to point out, expecting that, well, we had an nth increase in the last ratings. Maybe we're on a trend.
So the research says something definitive, you got to make a change, and then you're banking on something that's probably nothing more than a wobble within the margin of error in terms of Nielsen's reporting to kind of hold back.
Yeah, we're going to give it another book. Okay, well then we'll gather here again next year and write the same report, which I've done. Yeah, and the thing's been on life support for 3 years, and it's not gotten any easier. It's not certainly not gotten any better. I've been in discussions recently about a format change, and it's always been expensive and risky, and it's even worse now.
Yeah.
But sometimes, the worst things are the changes you don't make.
So analysis paralysis.
And then, then there's the research that they do to appease someone, and then ignore it completely and do whatever they wanted to do in the first place.
Yes, I've seen people change format to country where the opportunity didn't exist, but the revenue was there.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah.
So, and again, let's just talk about this in terms of structuring let's start with the format search, because that's probably the kind of the holy grail of perceptual testing. What kind of, let's pretend we're in a market that's, top 25 to 50 or so. Give me an idea of the sample framework, how you would, screen the test in based on a competitive matrix, and, what kind of numbers are we looking for to really make an informed decision?
Typically, you'd start with a sample of 800 bodies, and it's a messy interview, because in addition to the kind of theoretical, we wonder if there's an opportunity for a hard classic rock, or there's an opportunity for a rhythmic AC. Well, in such a thing, in addition to looking at the appeal and relative hold for that, we need to compare it to the formats that would shoulder up against it that already exist in the market.
Yep.
So it becomes a big, long, messy interview and a big, long, messy analysis, but it's the best tool we've got, and it's the most important decision many owners are making at a given time.
Carolyn, are hook clusters enough to represent a format? And I've seen where radio stations will blow themselves up and go in a different direction just based on the way a hook cluster tests.
That's sort of a loaded question. Number one, we never go with just one in a format.
Yeah, you usually do descriptive format descriptors and music clusters, don't you?
Yes, we do those. But I mean, music hook clusters in and of themselves, I make sure that we have at least 2 different to represent each format.
Oh, okay, that's good. Redundancy.
Otherwise, I've seen people screen OMTs that way too,
Yep.
Where look at this, the Hotel California was in the screening montage, and look, Eagles test on top. I mean, you
have to be careful of those ubiquitous universal songs that test through at every format. You really do need to represent the format when you define it musically.
Right. And I know Lee spends an awful lot of time with programmers to make sure that any montage we use representing a genre is appropriate. And it's a group of montages, not just one. It's, you know, it's tricky. It's not perfect. It's absolutely not perfect. We let, you know, when we do things with montages, we often like to do things afterwards, called OMTs, to really test the music, because it's challenging.
You need to make sure there's a format behind whatever niche that you've identified.
Yes.
As one group exec said to me years ago, yeah, I see there's a hole in the market, but is there a market in the hole?
Yeah.
Does that represent enough ratings that we can, you know, generate significant audience sales using it?
So you don't have to name names, and you don't have to tell me a story, because I've got one that can end this. But if each of you can share maybe a description that would be enough of an anonymous description not to embarrass anybody, give me an idea of some of the worst research mistake, a mistake or mistakes you've seen implemented over your years doing this.
Well, I mean, just in general, research directs you towards an obvious hole in the market, and you decide you want to be the fourth in another format just because you like the music. I've seen people do that. And you just go, what are you thinking? Why did you spend money on research in the first place if you were just going to do what you wanted to do? That's
Yeah, sorry. The only one that occurs to me would probably require me being placed in a witness protection program if I say it. So I'm staying mum.
Well, I'll do mine, because I probably am the central contributor to the mistake. And that is, it was a bunch of us non-ethnic, older white businessmen sitting around thinking we knew what was best to serve the Hispanic community in the town that I was in. And we made the decision to do a reggaeton-based, Caribbean-influenced pop radio station in the market I was in. And this is a market that was completely made up of folks that had migrated from interior Mexico. So the music taste couldn't have been more different. And the 0.5 share that I think we peaked at was probably a representative of the classic and penultimate research mistake of my career. Although I'm not the only one, but I ended up taking the blame to make it easier for the other empty suits that were in the room with me.
If we want to talk about white men wearing suits sitting in a room, I can go through a career of
you've
them
opened up a
deciding
vein
what
for
women
Carolyn
want.
there, Mike.
Oh, we go. Yes, I love this story.
No, just I just remember sitting there and
Yeah.
oh, girls will really love the pregnant bikini contest. Yeah. Well, not so much, you know,
Yeah.
or just the way we spoke to women and continue to speak to women. You know, when you have white guys sitting around a conference table deciding what other people want, you make a mess. And we've seen it time and time and time again.
We have 4 more findings. This was probably the most provocative one we've done, but we've got 4 more to go. Research mistakes that radio stations make. We'll see you again for the next video.
New Voodoo builds digital products and conducts research and marketing campaigns for clients.
It's easy to get in touch. Drop us a line at tellmemore@newvoodoo.com.